You like my green today for March?
Oh, I do. It's amazing. So festive
I didn't really
and
think about that when
timely.
I picked out this shirt, but I afterward, I mean, that's the key. Like afterward, can you make the connection of like, oh, hey, this
Right,
relates in
right.
this way?
No, I get it. And like mine is yellow because pot of gold for leprechauns and whatnot.
Oh my gosh, I love it.
I just made that up.
I know you did. I love you so much for it. So, well,
Anyway, hi
welcome.
y'all.
It's the Life Unfiltered podcast. Clearly,
Clearly,
I'm Ashley
I'm
DeWeese, and that
Justin
is.
DeWeese.
Oh my gosh, we have to work this out because we're constantly talking over each other when we do this intro, and I'm sure it's
You
very
told me to
annoying.
interject more. I'm
I know,
interjecting my
but you've
name.
like introed the last couple, and I thought that maybe like we'd
Okay.
kind of trade off sort of thing.
Okay,
Anyway,
go.
you know the show. I'm Ashley DeWeese. This is my bearded beau, Justin DeWeese. Here we are. This is our shenanigans and shit.
Life Unfiltered,
Life
as the podcast title so clearly
unfiltered.
states.
Because you never know what's going to go down.
You really don't.
You really don't. And most recently, we lived that out. Just
Yeah.
to, we did. And we discovered something about ourselves in the last week, and that is we have a common love, apparently, for unexpected health happenings. We like to spend
Indeed we
date
do.
nights in the ER, is what I'm getting at. We like to spend
Yeah.
date nights in the ER.
There are probably better choices that could be made, but here we are.
We like to fly by the seat of our pants, live life on the edge,
Yeah.
something
Why
like
don't
that.
you tell them what's going on or what happened?
Soldier Boy, tell him. You can you tell I'm feeling a little bit better?
Yeah, I'm here for it.
Um, yeah, so last week, I mean, for the last couple of weeks, and by the way, like we've mentioned this before, we tend to record these, our schedule, we record these on Friday mornings. Just works out best for our schedule. Go drop off the kids at school. We'll come in and record these. We did not record this last Friday, and this is due out to come tomorrow. And it actually worked out pretty nicely because we can tell this story more closely to it actually happening this way. But yeah, I'd been experiencing some like belly pain for a couple weeks, just kind of like low grade. It just didn't feel normal. And I don't know, last Wednesday,
Tuesday,
Tuesday, last
Tuesday.
Tuesday, it kind of got increasingly worse and I started to have more abdominal pain and it was predominantly on my right side. And we had experienced some pelvic belly pain with this one over here um, a couple years ago. And so we knew like when it was on the right side that can often be like things with dealing with the appendix and whatnot. So, anyways, was having that, decided to go to the doctor. They could get me in Friday afternoon. And so this past Friday afternoon, we went in and she was like, yeah, I mean, it could be one of two things. It seems from what I'm feeling around here and what you're saying, like it's either something to do with your appendix or perhaps you have an ovarian cyst that is getting ready to rupture. We were like, awesome. I
Sounds like a
mean,
good weekend.
and mind you, like we had plans for this upcoming
We had
week.
big plans. We had lots of things cooking.
We were supposed to be, I mean, actually, today I'm supposed to be opening up my eyes to the beautiful sunshine of Sarasota, Florida, so that we could take our son to an Atlanta Braves spring training game today, because we're recording this on Tuesday. And
But we're not.
clearly,
It's clearly the same
this is
backdrops that you see every time. So,
we really just we threw that in the background because we wanted to keep everything like,
right, right. This is one
on
of
the
those
north.
AI generated backgrounds.
Yeah, no. So anyways, needless to say, we were like, so what do we need to do here? And this is Friday. Like, can I just say, like, if you're gonna have some sort of like medical issue, medical emergency that like you try to make that happen earlier in the week, it does probably make things go a little bit smoother. But anyways, no, this is Friday afternoon, what, about 2 o'clock?
Yeah, yeah. About when we got in to see her.
Yeah. So the first part of it was, they obviously she's going on speculation of her knowledge and experience as a doctor and what I'm saying and I've been experiencing and feeling on my body. And but she was like, obviously we need a picture. Like we need to be able to see what is actually going on in there. And, doctors don't just have those machines in, you
Nor do
have
they
to
have
go.
X-ray vision,
Correct.
which would be really
So
handy.
long story short, of course we couldn't just call up the nearest uh, place that services things like that and be like, hey, she can't be like, hey, I have a patient that I really need to see what's going on inside of her. Can you get her in? Because why would it be that simple?
Well, I mean, in fairness, it probably is that simple, but insurance companies,
Insurance. We will not go down that rabbit hole today.
yeah,
But
let's
yeah,
not
so
rile me up on that one.
the quickest way to get that image, and I mean, we've been here, done that before. We had the same sort of scenario. We had the same sort of scenario with my mom's brain injury several years ago. Is they needed to get a picture of her brain through a CT scan very quickly, and the fastest way that we could do that was go to the ER. So we headed to the ER in a town about an hour away from us, just because it was highly recommended for better services. And so we decided that's what we are going to do because we had to find out what was going on. So immediately, and this is going to be, first of all, it's my scenario, so it's going to be a little bit longer told story anyway, but I just feel like
Shocking.
I just feel like there's so many lessons. And firstly, as always, the goal of this here is in our storytelling and ramblings of our life unfiltered that we share. Like the goal is that there's some sort of value that anyone who's listening to us can pull out of it. And honestly, for me with this show, as I think about if I were a listener, I want to hear things that I can connect with and be like, wow, like I get that, or me too, or to just realize that like maybe I'm not the only one who thinks these things or feel these things or has gone through these
Of
things.
course,
So that's the purpose here. But yeah, so immediately your girl is not all about any of this because my brain,
not
and
in the
yes,
least.
I just want to point out that yeah, I am a a lifestyle coach and I work a lot with clients on their mindset and controlling their thoughts and creating useful stories for themselves. But I am still human. So that does not absolve me of ever falling into some of these same traps, even though I know, the right way to do the things. And so I am not all about it. I've had some traumatic experiences with hospitals, and I just was going down the pipe of all of the potential outcomes that could happen. Clearly well before we even knew what the case was going to be. And yeah, so I was not about this life that was unfolding on Friday. And I think that's kind of like you'll find yourselves in those moments in life, right? Where you're like, I am not about what is unfolding in front of me. I'm not about this. I don't want this to happen.
Right, but you can't control it.
Unfortunately, which
I mean, try as you might.
this is the unique dynamic. And perhaps, maybe you have a similar relationship if you're listening, but, the beard and I have a lot of similarities, but we are very different in these
Very.
capacities because I'm trying to control everything to experience the least possible pain and strife in our life. And he, on the other hand, not that he welcomes the pain and strife, but he also just has accepted the fact that we can't control all of the things. So what are you going to do is kind of his thing.
Right.
Like, we're just going to step through this.
Right. What's the problem? What's the next step?
Right. Right. So the next step was to go home. We again had to think ahead of, potentially if this was if it was a cyst, I was going to have to just go home and let it play out and do the thing. If it was my appendix, then it was highly likely that there was going to be no going home until after that appendix was taken out of me. So we packed a quick bag with the things that we would need. Our kids were still at school. And of course he was like, okay, let's go. And your mom will pick up the kids. And I was like, no, like I have to see the kids before we leave. Because again, my brain is going down the route of, I don't know how this is going to play out. And first of all, like, I want to touch base with my kids. But secondly, like, you just don't know. Like, it's potential surgery. And yes, as my bearded beau reminded me like 50 million times, like it's a very routine surgery. But do you ever watch television? Like things that are very routine sometimes don't turn out to be so routine. So I wanted to make sure that we chatted with the kids and just let them know what was going down before we went. So we stopped.
So we did, and Dax was upset because we were pulling him away from his dodgeball game.
Mm-hmm.
He was like, "Okay, cool.
Like thanks, dude.
Yeah, yeah. I'll see you later. Okay, bye."
You know, it's interesting. Our kids are at the ages where, because one's in 7th grade and one is in 5th grade, and they're at the ages where one is really starting to get, some of these more like adult like situations and the weight of them. Whereas the younger one isn't quite there yet. And so, yeah, like he was all like, oh, I'm missing dodgeball. Whereas our daughter was understanding like, hey, this is kind of serious. And, mom's going to get checked out for something that's not so great. And again, it's just interesting to see the different dynamic between the two. So, yeah, so we headed we headed to the ER, which I don't recommend. ERs suck.
ERs are pretty terrible.
They are pretty terrible. Now, first of all, like, thank you to all of the nurses and doctors and surgeons and clinicians and whatever titles work in these elements of the ER. So I'm not saying like you suck. I'm just saying ERs suck. I'm sure, people who actually work in the ER have their own different side of the story of suckiness of the ER. But from a patient perspective, like they just suck. And I think we need to tell, first of all, just for a little bit of humor in this situation, like we initially went to the wrong ER.
And listen, like I will
I was
completely
not
own
driving. Let me say, I was not driving.
That was my fault because I plugged the place into the handy dandy little GPS in the truck, and away we go. And we get there, and the map says, zero point 0.1 miles or whatever, and I see a sign that says emergency. So that's where I turned in, right? Because sometimes if you go to the address of a hospital, it's going to take you to the front door, right? Well, I don't want to go to the front door. I want to go to the emergency room. And so I turned in there, and we go in and we start the process of getting checked in and
we
whatnot.
didn't just drive up to the wrong ER. Like we legit parked and went in and checked in to the wrong
and so
ER.
Again, totally owning the fact that I made that mistake. However,
it was a great experience.
I'm not the dipshit planner that put 2 different hospitals on the same damn block. Like, what? Anyway, went in there and
like checked in to the point that I had already collected a urine sample.
Right.
People already collected a urine.
Yes. Okay. We get it.
I'm just saying.
We're sitting there, and when they took her out to go pee in her cup, I was looking around and I'm like, man, none of this stuff says Stormont Vale. And so I pulled up Google Maps real quick and I looked and I went, oh.
And of course, he knew that I was already not about this life, right? I was not about this life. And he was going to have to tell me we were in the wrong place.
I have to have the internal conversation. Do I tell her now?
Oh my gosh, I would have killed you.
Do I just let this play out?
I would have.
When we check out, I'll be like, oh, hey, by the way.
This wasn't even the place we were supposed to go. I would have killed you. And here's the thing. If you're listening and going like, so what's the big deal? Like you needed to get help. And so this was obvious. This was not like code red emergency. This was obviously, we believed, we didn't know, but assumingly, my doctor assumed that it was probably early appendicitis. If it was appendicitis, like it was probably early on. So it wasn't like, I wasn't in like, wasn't code red, but like, I don't even know what I was saying. I would have killed you if you had.
So we had a little more flexibility to talk to the nurse at the desk and go, hey, we're in the wrong place. What do we got to do here? And she goes, have you been treated? I said, nope. She goes, just walk out.
So FYI, if you ever pull up to the wrong emergency center, you can just walk out before you've been seen and treated. Oh, here's what I was going to say is why switch? Because my doctor had recommended that we go to a particular place for their level of care. And I didn't know anything about this other place. And if I was going to potentially like go under the knife, I at least want to be at the place where my doctor had said, hey, like, this is like
Right.
the best place to go.
So anyway,
So we
we
got
made our
to
way to the right place.
and went through the process again, which it was very enlightening because the processes were not the exact same. And I'm not going to go through the details, but the things that I did to check in at the one ER, it was not the exact same process. Wouldn't you think, like, kind of, wouldn't you think there would be like some standardized procedure
You
for
would think
ER?
it'd be pretty similar.
Like, they didn't even check my ID at the first place. Like, they just went off of who I said that I was. Like, they didn't even look at my ID or anything like that. But
Yeah,
they
that was a
did.
little weird.
They did at the next place. So,
Like a
anyways,
fly-by-night operation.
we went to next ER, got checked in. Then we got the lovely, like, sit and wait. And sit
I
and
watched
wait.
Jeopardy for the first time in years, and I
Oh my gosh,
smoked those clowns on that
you
show.
did. I mean, I was a little turned on. I already know how smart you are, but it was kind of fun to sit there and listen to you like answer the questions that the people on the show um were not able to answer. And those were guys that had already been on the show. I don't know
Right.
if
And
they
truth be told, I was just like whispering that to her, hoping that I'd say it often enough that she'd tell me just to shut up. Okay, knock
mm.
it off.
No, I actually liked it because I knew you were that smart to answer some of those questions. But um yeah, so we watched that. We got to listen to the lovely lady that was also waiting in the ER. Her little support person was watching Netflix loud as F.
On her phone, because why wouldn't you in a public place?
And in addition, here's another mental component for all of you to learn from. You know, I talk a lot about like when you're doing a lot of sitting and waiting, when there's delayed action, right? When there's time to pass between the thing that you need to do and actually doing it, you actually make it worse on yourself. And that is like the epitome of the ER because you have this time to just sit while you're waiting for the opportunity to be seen, which means your mind has time to continue thinking because we're sitting there like watching like all of these people get rolled by of whatever they're there for. You see people that are already in their ER rooms. God knows how long they've been in there. And, you usually see the ones that like are not doing so hot
Yeah, it
as
ain't
you're
good.
as you're sitting and waiting to be seen. So it was not pleasant. Thank God for Jeopardy, truly.
So anyway, we sat there, waited to be seen, and then finally we had a nurse come and grab us and take us to the room that she was going to be
Mm,
sitting in.
don't skip this part. We had a nurse come to draw my labs because at this ER, they like draw your labs immediately. And she looks down at my arm and she like gets all giddy. I'm not even exaggerating here. Like she's all giddy. And she was like, oh my gosh, those veins. And of course, I'm like, you're not the first person who's told me that. But I bring that no, I
Printing
bring
you
that
out a
up.
certificate.
You have the same thing said to you. Like when you take care of yourself regularly, you've got good blood flow. You've got good stuff going on with your veins. So nurses love you because they can just do their job and they just get off on seeing really good veins. So again, that was check number one where I'm like, hey, thanks. Everybody likes a good compliment. I'll take a compliment on my veins any day of the week.
So anyway, that did that, waited some more, and then we got escorted back to the room that we were going to be in, and waited some more because it's ER. Why wouldn't you just
Right.
wait and wait and wait and wait?
But at least you're by yourself. It's nice once you get into that room because it's just,
Right. The door's shut. You don't have to hear all the caterwauling going on out yonder.
right. So
It
we
was not.
waited, saw the ER doc. Um, you know, they never tell you like, or you never anticipate how many times you have to tell the story over and over again. Because you
Right.
like to, I'm kind of like, I've already told like three other people by now. Do they not just like relay the information? And I'm sure that they do, but they want to again like hear it from you, make sure you're saying the same things and all that jazz. So had to go through the rundown with him. He examines me. He's thinking probably same thing, but got to do the CT scan stuff. So that was next, I think.
Right. So
And
ordered the CT.
yeah, and I never had a CT scan. I've had an MRI, but I've never had a CT scan. And they wanted to see they want to do a CT scan with dye. There's a correct name for it. I don't remember what they said.
That's
Um,
essentially what it is.
but they put dye in your system so that stuff pops up better. And when I went back to do it, the girl was like, first of all, it did cross my mind. I was like, is this dye toxic?
And I literally
Is
looked
there
at her
like
and said,
red? Is
"Who
there red
cares?"
30, blue 5? But yeah, she was like, just so you know, when I get ready to release this into your system, you're gonna feel like you peed your pants. It's gonna have that sensation. And so I was like, okay. So she came over to the little system and was like, okay, I'm getting ready to put it in. And sure as shit, it did. It was like the weirdest thing in the world. The weirdest thing in the world. But anyways, got that done. That was pretty quick. Talk ended up coming back in. I don't know. It was pretty like, I mean, steady. Like I was kind of impressed in the beginning. It was pretty steady. Like we weren't having to wait like a bunch in between either a process
Huh,
needing to
that's
be
one version
done.
of the story.
I felt that way at first. So, anyways, Doc came in and was like, yeah, seems to be probably your appendix in there. And you could fill in here. I only hear like half the things that they say. I did learn a new, like, there's things called poop balls,
Yeah, she had a poop ball all up in her appendix,
a little
which made
poop
it
ball.
problematic.
Right.
But yeah, so the doc comes in and he's like, "Yeah, it looks like appendicitis, so we're gonna turn this over to surgery and have them take a look and make sure that my opinion is accurate,
And
and
the
then
radiologist who
we'll
actually reads who's,
right, and then
that's their expertise.
we'll go from there and try to schedule in the OR because who knows what else is going on."
So they take a look at it and determine that um, the appendix probably needs to come out. Um, of course, there's nothing is ever like 100%. But obviously, based on their experience and what they've seen, the surgeon, well, even before we got to the surgeon, like the doc came back in and said, yeah, the radiologist and the surgeon, like looked at the stuff and they're like, yes, we should probably go ahead and take this out. Um, and I'm like, so that means, and he was like, surgery, like tonight. And this is what, 8 o'clock? Well,
Oh yeah, all of.
it was like 7:30 at that point, because this is when it started to get like longer. Because when the doc left after confirming that I was going to indeed have surgery, he was like, I gotta go talk to the surgeon and find out what they have going on tonight. Like, do they have a party tonight that we have to schedule around? What the schedule is and to see, when they'll get you in. And so he leaves and we didn't see him again or anyone again that could tell us anything for what
2.5 days felt like
it was a very long
a long
time.
ass time.
And in all of this, you see now, like it's kicked in, like we're doing the damn thing. Like I'm having surgery and I've not been hospitalized since the last pregnancy, which was in 2012. Um, and then prior to that, like the only surgery I've ever had is when I had my tonsils out in the first grade. But do you still have your tonsils?
I know.
That I took my tonsils for show and tell in first
I'm
grade.
sure you did, weirdo.
They let you take them home, which is so weird. I bet they don't do that now. Like you
Yeah,
had the
probably
option to
not.
take them home. I took them home in a little baggie and we were actually
That's
traveling. We were actually
disgusting.
going to our friends in Arizona and I wanted to take them with us because I wanted to show my friend. My
I
parents were
want to
like,
take Joe and Bob.
my parents were like, we are not putting this bag of tonsils in our luggage
Yeah,
and
I
then
don't
open
blame
up our
them.
luggage with tonsils
No, what
and tonsil juice.
the hell's wrong with you?
Tonsil juice. Um, Anywho,
Anyway,
so
back to the topic at hand.
back to the topic at hand. It had been a heck of a long time since I had been in the hospital for any kind of surgery. And then coupling that with my just increased disdain for hospitals, period, with my dad and with my mom, I just wasn't about it. And so now my brain is turning to how do I move through this? And I want to pause here for a moment because I think do you do this? I know a lot of women do this. We compare things in our life to other people's experiences. And we
Well, of
do a
course, everybody does that.
comparison often from the standpoint of, do I really have the right to feel this way about my situation? Because I know that my situation is not the extent or to the degree of significance as someone else's experience. And while that may be true, right? Because there's different levels of, hey, this is way more serious than this.
Right.
It doesn't take away like your experience with your situation. That's why like I always hate it when people tell me like, I don't know why you're so scared about this, or I don't know why you thought that hurt. That didn't hurt. And it's like, wait a minute. Just because that wouldn't have hurt you doesn't mean that this is not painful for
Right.
me. And I just want to throw that out there because I think sometimes people hesitate to talk about parts of their story or experiences that they've had because they're afraid that someone else is going to be like what, why are you, no pun intended, but why are you belly aching over this? Like it's not like you had this, right? And I just want to say like again, like this is not a comparison thing because this is just about the experiences you have and what you feel during them and what it's like for you. And it's not you saying like this is like
Well, and the thing
worse.
is that like those kind of people that are going to say stuff like that are typically completely on the outside looking in,
Sure.
right? Like it's not going to be somebody that had like open heart surgery going, well, why were you being like this about that? Right? It's going to be somebody that's not ever been in that situation, period.
Right.
You
Or
know,
it could be someone that's been in that situation and just looks at it differently. But anyways,
sociopathic robot.
all I'm saying is I understand this is like an potential, this is an appendectomy I'm getting ready to have that day. And it could be a hell of a lot worse. I get it. But it still was a thing for me. Okay. Um, so yeah, so where were we? Like I'm waiting. My mind's going down this whole of like I'm getting ready to have surgery. And I knew that that meant that I was going to have anesthesia, which again, like there's
Not
risks
like
to
local
everything.
anesthesia, but night anesthesia.
Right, like gonna put me under for this surgery. Thankfully, I mean, obviously, like they're cutting
Right.
into me.
It would be no fun if you were like awake and like, oh, so that's a cut you make, huh? That's weird.
Right. No, but you start thinking about, or at least for me, like you start thinking about like the risks because there's risks with everything.
Of
Like
course.
no matter how routine it is, no matter how skilled the people, like it's still, I'm of the opinion like I don't want anything out of the norm to go on in my life if it doesn't have to.
Of course.
And so again, like I'm like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. And of course, Justin's like, you're not going to know anything anyway, because you're going to be knocked out. Like, you're not going to know. And I'm like, I know. And that's the thing. Because again, my brain, given our life, the way we approach situation, it's all influenced. And if you're taking notes or looking for something of value, here's a piece. Like the way we look at things that we're going through in our life, it's always colored by the previous life experiences that we've had.
Of course. It'd be impossible not to be.
And so, I'm obviously, but my subconscious is pulling on, memories of, you know, the ER situation with my dad when he passed away and being in the ER with my mom when she had her fall and her brain injury. And so I'm, just all of these things are, clouding. And so I don't have positive stories. I don't have positive memories. Um, And so I'm thinking about the potential risks and I'm playing out, that side of it. It's kind of like, yeah, like I know everything can be okay. And I know it most likely will be and it'll go fine. But and then my brain turns to all of these other things. So, I'm starting to think about I need to, we called the kids and FaceTime the kids and that I'm like, what if this is the last time I talk to them? What if something doesn't go right? And I'm just getting very, very nervous. And part of it is justified, but the other part of it is again, like I was doing my best at the time to try to control my thoughts, and it's challenging.
Yeah. Well, and it's, at least for you, I think, it's helpful to have someone there with you.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, just keep breathing. Like this is what's happening next. It's, yeah, there's risk, but here's also all the good things. And
Yeah, if you're someone that tends to, I mean, first of all, I don't care, no matter who you are, you should always go into these situations whenever possible with someone else with you.
right.
But definitely if you're someone like me who tends to have some anxious thoughts, and get a little concerned and crazy about things, definitely it's good to choose don't choose someone that is also highly anxious.
You don't
And
want two high strung people sitting in that room. It's not gonna be
so
good.
choose that partner wisely. But yeah, like it was challenging to control the thoughts because I was going down that pipe. And anyway, so surgeon came in, finally and was like, hey, tell me the story. And I'm like, oh, tell the story. And so he goes through his assessment of what he's seen on the screen and so forth. And I'll be honest with you, like once you have someone come in that is the one that's going to be working on you, and he's obviously already been working on other people, and it's by this point it's what, 9 o'clock, 9:30 at night.
All of.
uh it was getting more real as the time was coming by, and um it was just a little bit unnerving. And so he was going through the things, and I got my second compliment of the night, which I do want to share because I think it's important throughout this, which we're going to continue talking about and really get to here in a moment, of again the importance of like taking care of yourself before things like this might happen. But what did he say? Because I always botched what.
Well, first he said that you were really thin. He was like, well, you're
He
thin,
did,
so
oh, he
and
did say that? I don't even remember
oh
that.
yeah, and so because he said, and this was counterintuitive to me, but he said that it's harder to read a C. It can be harder to read a CT scan on a thinner person. I assume it's got something to do with contrast. I don't know, but he was like, so it was a little more challenging to read it, but yeah, for sure, there's um, it's inflamed and going bad, and we need to take care of this. And then he said the other thing he said was that um, it's good that you were able to catch it as early as you were, and that was also due to the lower body fat that you're carrying, because he said that a lot of times people that are overweight and carrying extra weight, they don't necessarily feel it as early going bad, and then they can end up in a bad place where it bursts or whatever. So
Right.
those were the two compliments he paid you. But
I
yes, he
mean,
said you were thin.
it was nice to hear that. And for me, it wasn't even, like I said, I don't even remember him saying the thin part. It was just when he said, like, since you don't have much belly fat, because I track my data and I pay attention to my visceral fat. What, because you have visceral fat and what's the other kind?
I don't know off the top of my head.
Sub something. But visceral fat is your belly fat, and that's the fat that you really want to pay attention to, because if you have a high amount of visceral fat, belly fat, it causes a lot of unneeded complications. And so I've been paying attention to that, and I knew that mine was fairly low. So then when he said that, I was like, awesome, like I'm doing something right here. But yeah, so he went through all of that and said, hey, we're gonna have surgery. And I was like, well, when? And he said, well, as soon as everybody gets you prepped and ready and all the things. So that was that. And I think what they took me back about 10:30.
Yeah, something like that.
um and it was nerve-wracking because again, the closer that you get, you're like
Well,
but
and
yeah.
just let me interject. When we were sitting there before we wheeled to the OR, she was getting nervous and anxious and getting a little worked up. And I asked her what she was thinking, and she said that, you know, this is why we work out and take care of ourselves so that we're not in situations like this. And I said that that's true to a certain point, right? We do that so that we aren't in these kind of situations. That being said, there's stuff like your appendix going south on you that you simply cannot control. As near as I've been able to find, there's nothing you can do food wise, workout wise, whatever wise that will keep your appendix healthy. Either it goes bad or it doesn't. And so what I told her was, yeah, we do to try to avoid these type of situations, but also so that these kind of situations aren't as
Right.
impactful or as negative as they could be.
And this is a case where I knew all of that. I knew all of that. But again, when it's happening to you, your mind can get a little wonky, and you don't think as clearly, which I wasn't. But yeah, and I think this is something that we should pause a little bit on to talk about, because I have clients, and you've had clients that they'll say things like, but I'm doing everything right. right? Like I'm doing everything right. And sometimes we actually aren't, but I'm doing everything right. And the scale is still not moving, or this, my blood pressure is not improving, or whatever it is, right? I'm doing everything right. And so in this situation, at the height of just being nervous and scared and with all the happenings, that is what I said to him is like, I don't like, I was frustrated because it's like our entire life for the last 8 years has just been a progression of controlling what we can control in regard to our mental and physical health to lessen the possibility of any sort of significant health happening. Um, but just like we tell our clients, and you just said, like it's not a pass where you are absolved. And I
Right.
and I think it's important to know that on both sides, because there's also people potentially listening. Whenever something like this or any sort of health thing does occur for a person that is in no uncertain terms like fit and healthy or all about health, like there tends to be some chatter from the peanut gallery that's like,
Right. You
see,
wasted all
look,
that time.
you wasted all that time working out all these years, eating healthy all these years, and look, here you are. You're in the ER, you're gonna have your appendix out. Like, this is what I'm saying. And that's just a dumb, it's just a
Right.
dumb mindset to have. Um, because things still happen even when you live a healthy lifestyle. But like we share with our clients is like the 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 likelihood of those things happening do decrease.
Right.
And when the things do occur like this one, your body is in a different state. Like I talked at the time of this, I mentioned it, and then I definitely have mentioned it to you and my mom afterwards of, I can't imagine going through this process or any other having been in a state of poor health.
Be tough.
Right. And that happens every day for people. And again, I'm not judging and shaming on anyone who maybe is in poor health or out of shape or overweight or whatever. It's more of a call to action
Right.
of like, this is why, like, you don't know what's kind of like, I didn't know this was going to occur. And to pause, let's interject here. The reason we opened this up with, hey, we like date nights in the ER is because did we finally decide 2 years ago?
3 years.
3 years
Because it's
ago.
21.
3 years ago in February, which is, it's weird. Like March 1st was when this appendectomy occurred for me. Like February, we were in the ER with him because he had been experiencing pains and whatnot. And if you want to kind of quickly tell how your situation with your appendix was just a little bit different than mine.
Yeah. So my gut had been hurting for a couple days, and I'm a dude, so I was like, "Nah, it's nothing. We'll just ignore it."
It's
So
gas.
finally, like a weekend, I go to the doctor, tell him what's happening, and he's checking me out. He's like, "Well, I don't feel anything." He's like, "Let's do some blood work and pee in this cup for me, and we'll see what we can see." And so we did, and everything came back looking normal. And so he's like, "Well, just keep an eye on it, and you can do this over the counter medication to try to whatever, and you know, call back if it keeps up." And so I did, and it kept up. And so I called back, and he was like, "Well, yeah, we maybe should want to get this checked out." But again, insert insurance company that says, "Well, yeah, you really can't do that just yet." So waited a little bit more, and then finally, we were able to get the CT scan scheduled on a Monday, and I go in and get the CT scan, and like 30 minutes after the scan, they call me and they go, "Yeah, you need to go to the ER right this second. Like, don't wait. You need to go now."
Yeah, like this was
And
the difference. Like mine was like, hey, this is probably what it is. Probably early
you should
on,
probably
we
go get
had,
it checked out.
and his was like, holy shit, get your ass to
Like,
the
you
ER.
need to go right now. And so we go to the ER and get checked in, and they tell us there that my appendix had actually ruptured
Rupture.
in this period of time. And I know exactly when it did because it was her birthday, because I'd been dealing with all of this. And I woke up in bed and I felt more pain than I had ever felt in my life. This was a Saturday.
Apparently, I'm not just a
And
pain in his ass, but I'm a pain in his
right.
side too.
But then it went away and I felt amazing. And so I went down to her and I was like, "Hey, like, big change here. Like, you know,
I
if
think I'm
I had
fine.
some sort of blockage in my poop hole or whatever, like it's cleared up and I think we're okay. But then the next day I felt like dog shit, and that's why we were able to get the CT scan on Monday. Anyway, we found out that my appendix had ruptured.
Mhm.
But what happened with me was, again, because we take care of ourselves, my body like calcified around that rupture. So like it just sealed it off. Like it, hey, this is going bad. Let's vacuum seal this area and control the contamination. So they admitted me, put me on IV antibiotics to make sure there was no infection in my blood, which they didn't think there would be since it was all sealed off and whatnot. Um, and then, the doc came in and said, hey, listen, like, we don't need to do surgery today because this is sealed off.
The
We're
body's
gonna
doing its
we're gonna
job.
wait a little bit, let the antibiotics run its full course. We're gonna because they prescribed me some, take it home. And they said, so you can either come back and do surgery and have this thing taken out, or you can just leave it in there because it's all sealed off and it more than likely won't be a problem. And I was like, well, I'm not a big fan of more than likely. So yeah, let's cut this thing out.
But again, had you not been in the state of health that you were in, had your body not been strong, like it wouldn't have been able to do that internally.
Yeah,
We
I mean,
would,
there was that same like 2 months later, a guy I went to high school with who is um, not trying not to make judgments because I don't live his life, right? But from outward appearances, does not place quite the importance on his health as I do. His appendix ruptured, and he ended up being in the hospital for like 10 days or something to get everything flushed out of his system because when it ruptured, it just flooded his body
right,
with nastiness.
right. Yeah, our bodies were ready for this,
Yep,
as ready as they
as
could
much as they
be,
could be.
right? As much as they could be. And that's another thing, like anytime that we have been in situations like this, like, they're asking like, what medications are you on? And we're like, none. And like, do you drink? Nope. Do you smoke? Nope. Like, no, no,
Oh
no.
yeah, when
And
I
they're
checked in,
shocked. They're
the nurse was
shocked.
like, "What medications you on?" And I'm like, "I go none." She goes, "You're not on any prescription drugs?" I'm like,
Right.
No." I go, "Does that not happen very often?" She goes, "Oh no." She goes, "Most of the people that come in here are on 5 or 6 different things." I
Right.
was like, "Well, that ain't good."
And like we
Anyway,
say, not like I don't feel bad about us saying this at all, but again, like all of this, it's just a call to action that like
right,
to do what you can, like do what you can. Like sometimes, yes, medications are needed. Yes, sometimes like the situation that you're in is the situation you're in. But what are you doing about it? Like what are you doing about it to strengthen your body? What are you doing to move
right,
yourself into a better position from where you currently are? That's really where we're coming at from here, is just we want to see people be working to move themselves into a better position of strengthening their body and giving yourself the best chance possible, instead of just sitting and waiting for something to inevitably occur, which
right.
most likely something is inevitably going to occur. But yeah, so we both have had this experience a little bit different, of course, but ultimately that's why we're kidding around, like twinsies, appendectomy twinsies. So yeah, like they took me back about 10:30, and it's that was the scary part, just because once there's the separation of, hey, we prayed, and asked Justin to pray over me, and said our kisses and see you laters, and now it's just they will you back, and it's like, okay, like we're in this. So we're in this, and we're doing the thing. And so yeah, I got done about, I think, 12:15 is according to my text messages that I see.
Yeah, something like
um
that.
and finished. And it's been interesting, just the recovery. Felt pretty good afterward. I mean, I had some pain initially, and then with the drugs and whatnot, they get you to help with that. Like when I got to come home, like I felt pretty good and whatnot. And then it's like it gets worse. So we had a rough go of it. What, night two?
Yep.
Or the first night home, I guess, but night two. Um, and we don't need to go into all of those details, but it sucked and it was scary. And, there's additional pain. And now you're at home without the security of feeling like you have trained people around you to help. And this is where,
Right.
again, like having a partner that one just doesn't say, well, I'm going to bed, like good luck through the night. He's great about that. And so it was a little scary and whatnot, but hopefully we're over the biggest hump of this. And I think again, there's multiple messages throughout the show here today on this. And so hopefully one of them is sinking in and resonating with you. But it's just, it's people so often look at the idea of cleaning up your nutrition and exercising, working out is just like solely this physical thing
You
that,
just want to look good in a bathing suit.
right. And you
Uh,
just think people should look this way or that way. And like we always say, like for sure, like for a lot of it, yeah, like I do, and I'm fine with it. But truly, it is about so much more than that.
right.
And this is just another example as to why. And it's unexpected. Like, and, a phrase I like to use for the surface level, like physical side of things, but also for the grand scheme of the health journey is if you stay ready, you don't got to get ready.
Right.
If you stay ready, you don't got to get ready. Because I lived a lot of my life in a position where I was not ready. I was not ready to go to the beach and feel confident in a swimsuit because I didn't like the way that it looked. I was not ready for any sort of health happening. My body wasn't in its prime state to be able to handle, being attacked by viruses or have a surgical situation where it needed to be strong to move through that process. Because that's the thing, like any sort of medical scenario, especially if you're having to go through surgery and things like that, like that's highly stressful on your body. Like
Right.
your body's just not like hanging out as this stuff happens. Like your body is going to work. And I think that's part of with the whole health thing. Like there's so much of this that is unseen. Like we can't see inside of our body on a daily basis for what's going on in there. And honestly, it kind of would probably be nice if we could, because if you literally could like look in a little thing every single day and see what was happening in your body, like there'd be a lot of times where people would have these big like oh shit moments. Like
Right.
no pun intended, since we've been talking a little bit about poop today, but you'd be like, oh shit, like that's what's happening in there. I better do something. But we don't have the luxury of seeing inside of our body. And far too often we're just being too comfortable and too dismissive of what is going on in there and not doing our due diligence to protect our body, to prepare our body so that it can be in the best possible situation if something were to happen.
Right. And I guess I would say, as y'all are listening to these stories and thinking, well, gee, that's nifty, but that's not me, whatever. Um, we're both grateful that we started this 8 years ago for ourselves. Um, for these reasons and many others that we've gone through on other episodes and we'll go through on episodes in the future. So we're grateful that we started 8 years ago. And I would just tell you, dear listener, that obviously it would be great if you'd started 8 years ago also, or 10 years ago, or whatever, right? The second best time to start, if you haven't, is today,
Yeah.
right? Like you can start unwinding some of that and preparing yourself. So, in the words of my beautiful wife there, you are ready. You don't have to get ready. You can stay ready, but you got to start.
Right. And anything, any place you can get yourself to is better than where you were.
Right.
Right. Because again, like your mind is going to tell you all kinds of stories. And I would also like to interject that when we say like the best time to start is now, like obviously on a previous episode, we talked about the importance of getting going with working out and your nutrition, like getting into action. Like that's the quickest way to start seeing physical results and life change. But also beginning to work on your mindset. Because again, as we shared today, like I have a pretty solid mindset these days. I have a lot of tools and strategies of how to help, keep my mindset strong and how to handle situations and how to navigate situations. But even with all of that work that I put in, like I still have these moments of
Sure.
weakness. And so I'm like, man, like if I hadn't done any of that work, what would this, I would have been
It would have been an
total like
adventure.
batshit crazy during this. And I was just a little crazy during this.
Right.
So
Just a smidge.
again, are you ever going to be 100% fully prepared? Is your body going to be like you just couldn't do anything else? No.
Probably not.
But that should not be a justification to
Right.
not get into any sort of action, period. Anything that you can do every single day. And I think these are choices that we make. Like, let's not continue to live under the guise of ignorance that you're just falling into the lifestyle that you're living. Like, no, you're making
Right.
choices
You're making
every
choices every day.
single day to put yourself in a situation. Are you making choices that are putting yourself in a situation that is going to be highly helpful for you and a great position to be working from? Or are you making choices every day that is putting you in a position of weakness?
Well, I always say, are you doing things that tomorrow you would reach back in time and say thank you, right? And I
Mhm.
think that both of us through these appendectomy stories can look back to our previous self and go, thank you for doing those things.
Thank you for doing these things. And it also just makes the fire hotter to continue doing the things.
The hell's a hard fire?
Stop making me laugh. In case you've never seen, like, I'll just, since we have the ability,
Oh
like,
boy, here we
well,
go.
no,
Now
like,
it's show and tell.
that's one
She
incision,
could
that's
she
two.
couldn't give you the tonsils, so here's a couple scars, guys.
Scars are cool. And then I got a third one, but I can't show you the third one. That would be highly inappropriate. We wouldn't be able to post these anymore.
It'll be truly unfiltered.
But no, that's why it's hard, because laughter hurts currently. Um, but no, like, it actually fuels my fire even more so to continue putting
Right.
in the work. Again, like, at this point in the journey, some of my clients will ask, like, how do you stay motivated? What do you do when, you're not seeing results on the scale or with your body fat or whatever it is you're working on? Like, what do you do when you feel like you've stalled and stuff isn't working? I show up and keep doing the things while I try to figure out what potential tweaks that I need to make. Because at the end of the day, and this is not what gets me out of bed every single day to follow my freaking plan and execute my routine, but it's still there, is that every day that I am making such choices that, cast a vote for that strongest, best version of me is way better than the shit choices that I made for a large portion of my life. So it's like, no, I don't wake up every single morning, and Justin definitely doesn't either. Like, we don't wake up and it's dark and cold and we're like, oh, I didn't really feel like doing this workout today. Like, but I'm going to get up and do it because I want to be in my best health. Like, that definitely is not.
No.
That's not what's fueling us to get out of bed. Like, there are more kind of like short-term things, goals on the table that help, as well as just following through on what it is we say we're going to do. But we still have that overarching thing in our subconscious that I have a choice today to get up and cast votes for my best, strongest, most
Right.
healthiest version of me, or the shit version of me. Like, who do you want to be today? What kind of action do you want to take today? And it just adds fuel to that fire, because why in the world would I ever take the foot off the gas to put myself in a position that's going to be a position of weakness in the future? Like I said, like, I'm pretty healthy by society's definitions today. And I just, knowing what this experience was like physically on me, like, I just am like, I would never want to go through this in an unhealthy state, and I'm not
Right.
going to. So it's
Right.
been
So
an
we're just gonna
adventure.
keep stacking them chips in our favor as much
Yep.
as we can.
That's all you can do. Control what you can control, and
Yep.
then the outcome will be what it will be. But yeah, so hopefully you've enjoyed story time today. If you didn't, sorry about you. But yeah, like, if there's one thing that you can take away from this today that's helpful for you, if you think that something that we shared in here might be helpful to others, the only thing we ever ask is that, you just would be willing to share these episodes out,
Right.
share our clips out with other people, just so that the message gets out. Like, again, healthy looks different on everyone. The process is going to look different on everyone. We just want to do what we can through sharing our life and our story like this to call more people into action of getting on the health train. Getting on the health
sooner
train
rather than later.
Sooner rather than later. Take the step. Don't worry about 20 steps down the pipe. Those things will come, but just take the
Just do
step
what's next.
and know that, you know, you can reach out to us and contact us here on social media or whatever. And if we can't help you, we can point you in the direction
Point you in the right direction.
People that can. So, all right, I am going to go rest my ass.
I was going to say, you're probably going to go take a nap after yapping for an hour.
I know, right? I know. Yeah. So, anywho, thanks for listening. We'll see you guys next week.
Like, comment, and share. I'm not going to call one this time because I'm about to pee my pants.